Welcome to the Fret Friends Podcast, a guitar and music podcast here to instruct, inform, and showcase. Fret Friends is a podcast from AP Guitar, a music tuition business established in 2012, which provide lessons, workshops, and courses to students all over the world. So here's your host, Adam Picard.
Yes. Welcome back to a bonus episode. Essentially, we have had season 1 that finished on the 21st of March, and then 10 days later I had an operation on my foot and I was on crutches for 3 months. It's still not fixed. It will be quite a few more months until it actually is, but things went a little bit quiet. And then, for those of you who don't know, I am also a wedding singer. So the weddings restarted, and they have pretty much finished now as well. And this is going hand in hand with the weather in the UK getting a little bit iffy now. So I'm basically ready to hibernate until spring next year, which means lots more things like this podcast, lots more video courses, and lots of productive and fun things for everybody to get involved in. First of all, I had some really lovely feedback from the first season, and that's basically what led me to do this bonus episode, because I am going to do a season 2. It'll either be at the end of this year or the very start of next year, but this episode is going to be nothing like season 2, because if you'll allow me, I'm going to talk about myself, which is something I'll never do. And I want to tell you a little bit about how I got into music, and I just want to be as open and honest as possible. So I may regret doing this, or it may just be brilliant, but at the end of the day, if it inspires anyone, or it inspires anyone to get a family member of theirs involved in guitar, anything like that, then it will be worth it. So let's go right back to the start. And I was very fortunate in my upbringing, where my parents allowed me and they were able to get me private music lessons, basically what I do now as a job. But it didn't start with guitar. It actually started with keyboard, and I think I understand why. It's a great instrument to be able to get a note out of to start with. Think of a guitar, you have to hold the neck, you have to push a string against the fretboards. The strings can be quite sharp, the guitars can be quite bulky. You have to push your finger up towards the edge of the fret, you have to hold a plectrum. Da-da-da-da-da. A piano, you can just press a key and you get a sound. Not only that, but I think it is a little bit more straightforward in terms of how you get your head around music theory from day one. But I wasn't bothered about that. I was 11 years old, so I came out of my lesson one day and my mum was waiting in the car park, and it was a rainy Wednesday afternoon, and I said to her, I don't want to do this anymore. My teacher is really, really boring. But looking back, he probably wasn't boring. It was just that as an 11-year-old, I just didn't really connect with somebody like that. So, of course, in my household, you had to play an instrument. So she said, what are you going to play then? And I was like, well, guitar, what else? And so we rented a guitar. You could actually rent a guitar for 3 months, and then if you decided at the end of that time that you wanted to continue, then you got your money back. And that's what we did. And my dad videoed he recorded onto something called a VHS, a couple of guitar-related things that were on late night on Channel 4 or whatever. And I was watching these and I loved them. And I loved Aerosmith as well, and they kept popping up on them. I thought they were the coolest thing ever, and Van Halen. So I started playing guitar. I don't know why I picked that one. It looked cool, it sounded cool, and I've played it almost every day for 26 years since, which is just amazing. It became my passion, of course. It became my confidence. It has become my career. It's way too late for me to be doing anything else now, so I'm gonna ride this out for as long as possible in my life. But it also became who I was. This is important because I see this with a lot of younger students of mine as well. It became my identity. You see, I didn't talk much in primary school or at the start of secondary school, and I think people used to say, "Why don't you talk?" And I didn't even give them an answer because I didn't. I was really timid, and I had like a little like sticky uppy bit on my hair as well, and I don't know what that's to do with it. It just goes with the whole timid image. Anyway, so picking up the guitar, it didn't just enable me to learn songs and become a good musician. But as cliche as it sounds, it's a cliche for a reason, it brought me out of my shell. So by 2 years later, at the age of 13, me and my band mates, we were in a band then, and we'd start playing gigs and we'd put on our own gigs. We rehearsed after school in the drama studio, and then we rehearsed at our singer's house every Saturday. And we'd hand out flyers around busy town centres, things I never thought that I'd be doing. Designing our own website on, was it GeoCities or Homestead or something, aka showing my age. And it was so much fun. We were essentially inseparable for the whole time, the four of us, and it genuinely gave me friends for life. We have a WhatsApp group, and we still talk to this day, and we share things about our life, and we're all kind of still doing. I'm doing music the most, of course, is my job, but the others are still doing bits and bobs of music anyway. And we talk about the memories, and guitar enabled all of that. Some of the memories are just hilarious. Like, we realise now, like, some of the things we did, we won't be able to do now in 2025. For example, I think it was our second or our third ever gig was in this pub that was at the back of a strip club, and you could, when you sat at the bar, the doors were open through the back of the pub, and you could see them doing their job on a school night. We shouldn't have even been in there, let alone a place like that. Like, we literally had RE the next day at like 8:45 a.m. or something, and we were sitting in bars seeing things that like we'd only ever sort of peeked at on the top shelf of like newsagents and stuff. It was just so weird. And like, our dads would fight over who would take us to the gigs that night. And mine won, of course. And he played the best music in his car as well, and the loudest. So, yeah, as I say, memories that I will never forget. And most importantly, at this point, I felt like I finally belonged with something. And I think that's quite magnificent, really. And especially at the age of 13, I think people go through a lot of the adolescent years and even further without possibly even finding that. So why is all this important? Well, this episode is, of course, giving me a self-indulgent outlet to a certain extent. Yeah, guilty. All right. But in all seriousness, it's to make a point that if I can inspire a student through teaching music or through this podcast to not only pick up a guitar, but to ride it out to a point where they are confident with it, then it's everything else in their life that playing a guitar will enhance. The confidence they will gain, which will help them in that big job interview that they have in their 20s. That's totally unrelated to music. And the social skills that they will have practiced from jamming with friends, meeting like-minded students, the patience that we require in life, more than ever these days, due to everything basically being on demand, that you have to have when you learn an instrument for hours and hours each week. That's practiced. Does that make sense, that last bit? So you have to have patience in life. You learn patience from learning an instrument. The list goes on and on. So these hypothetical students may not ever sell out stadiums, but they may find their purpose on this planet, and they'll feel pretty damn good about themselves. So that's essentially how I grew up with music. And then there are the wedding gigs. So wedding shows, I already mentioned these at the start. So I didn't see myself performing at weddings in my 30s, which I am in now, just so you know. I thought I'd be playing stadiums, arenas. We got fairly close in some ways, and also even being on, even after being on Britain's Got Talent in my early 20s, with Simon Cowell telling me that the dream ends here, although he winked at me as I left the stage, probably looking back most likely in just sympathy. Well, the dream didn't end there. I just changed dreams as I grew up. So another dream took its place, which was realizing that I could make a living through music in a different way without having to rely on anyone else. A lot of growing up and playing with other musicians, it's tricky because musicians, we're an odd bunch and not always the most reliable or organized. So I didn't want my destiny of music being in the hands of someone else, someone with a suit on and veneers, for example. So the stadium gigs that I once dreamt of, they were replaced with what I do now, which are more event type gigs. So weddings, parties, corporate events, even category A prisons. So I'm sure that's a conversation for another time. And sure enough, at these gigs, sometimes I get comments from well-meaning guests like, "You're great, you should be famous, and one day you'll make it." That's my favourite one. Even "You should go on Britain's Got Talent" or X Factor. But it took me a while. After my daughter was born, I realised actually I had made it, because I'm in a position where I perform live and I get satisfaction from that, and I teach students all around the world and I get a lot of satisfaction from that. And, you know, I do a lot of it from the studio at home, but I do travel for gigs, mainly in the UK, but occasionally in Europe. But I come home each evening to my family, and I thought, isn't that making it when we're not here on this world for a long time? I'm very happy with that. And I built something of my own. And I think especially with the teaching business, how it's evolved, especially the last 5 years, with teaching students all around the world and introducing some workshops and video courses and the AP Guitar Master Program. I'm so proud of what I've done. And each second that I work is for me and my students only. It's not for anyone else. And this job that I do and this lifestyle that I have is so perfectly in reach to you or anyone that you know growing up. It really is. I don't know. I think the point of this is that I used to have a bit of a chip on my shoulder that it probably wasn't good enough until 5-6 years ago, when I thought it is, because I no longer don't know what to say when someone says, "What do you do for a living?" My daughter started school last year, and people obviously ask you, and you know, you have to understand that about 95% of people you speak to won't understand that you can actually make a great living in music if your name isn't as famous as Ed Sheeran's. And I even had someone years ago at a party of mine in my own flat back then say, "Oh, you teach guitar now? That's brilliant. So what do you do for work?" I used to just say something funny like, "Oh, I deal," or something, which of course was a joke. But in his defence, I wasn't that far past actually realising myself that I could make a living by teaching and performing. So that's the weddings and the teaching side of things. There is much more, but as I say, I've allowed myself this one opportunity to talk about me, and I think I'll see how this goes. If people want to know more, I find that quite hard to say out loud, but if they do, then I will do way more of this. I've got lots and lots to say, and lots of information, guidance, and just hopefully just general inspiration to people who think I want to work in music, but realising, as I say, that you don't have to be a superstar to be able to have a really great life doing it. So we will wrap it up there. Now, if you want to know more about my lessons, workshops, video courses, because there is a new one out now, the Caged Blueprint or the AP Guitar Master Program, then you can visit apguitar.co.uk for further information. And thank you so much for listening. Please reach out and let me know what you think. You can send a text through most of the podcast platforms, or you can email me on contact@apguitar.co.uk, but I'll put that in the show notes as well. So thank you so much, and I look forward to hearing from you.